panel explores the rapidly evolving landscape of international education, from new opportunities for collaboration and skill development to emerging frameworks for global partnership and academic exchange. It is now my pleasure to invite our panelists to the stage. Chairing this panel is Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das, who joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1986. She served as High Commissioner to Bangladesh and held senior diplomatic assignments, including Shanghai and New York. She has served in various capacities at the headquarters, dealing with the UN, public diplomacy, and consular issues, and represented India in climate negotiations. She also served as India's alternate permanent representative to the OPCW, Director General of ICCR, and Secretary East. She is currently a distinguished fellow at the Council for Strategic and Defense Research and a member of the Governing Council of Asian Confluence. Ambassador Ganguly. Joining us on the panel, Ambassador Dr. Philipp Ackermann, the German ambassador to India. Ambassador Philipp Ackermann studied art history and economics, earning a doctorate in art history in 1993, the year he joined the German Foreign Service. His postings have included Rabat, New York at the UN mission, Kunduz, New Delhi, and Washington, D.C. In Berlin, he has held senior roles on Afghanistan, Pakistan, and as Director General for Africa, Latin America, and the Near and Middle East. Ambassador Dr. Ackermann. Dr. Rukmini Banerjee is the Chief Executive Officer at Pratham Education Foundation. Trained as an economist, she completed her BA at St. Stephen's College, followed by studies at the Delhi School of Economics. A Rhodes Scholar, she pursued further academic work at Oxford University and earned her PhD in education from the University of Chicago. Dr. Banerjee was the inaugural recipient of the Maulana Abul Kalam Shiksha Puraskar from the government of Bihar and was awarded the Yeadon Prize for Education and Development in 2021. Dr. Banerjee. Dr. Noah Pickus is the head of Global Strategy and Partnerships, Senior Advisor to the Provost and Professor at Duke University. He previously served as Chief Academic Officer at the Minerva Project and was a founding leader of Duke Kanchan University. He has also launched several university-based think tanks focused on policy and innovation. His book, The New Global Universities, explores the future of higher education worldwide. Professor Pickus. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the panelists.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a difficult task to do the last session of a particularly long day. But nevertheless, thank you, Professor Jacob, for putting together an event on a very interesting subject. We rarely sit together and talk on something as substantive and as important as mobility. I've been here since morning and I've learned a lot since from the various panels, and we had the External Affairs Minister with us. This particular panel, which is on India and global education, in a way lies at the heart of what we are discussing. We are going to talk about new challenges and opportunities in international education, skill development, partnerships, and exchange framework. As you have heard, we have a very, very distinguished panel with us, and the way I'll go about it is I'll say a few words and then I'll request the panelists to say something for their initial comments for 5 to 7 minutes. Then we will have a little bit of a discussion and then have a question-answer session. So one thing is certain, that the whole scene of global education is undergoing a lot of transformation. It's the transformation is happening very fast, and in certain ways, it's before you can understand one trend, it is overtaken by another. Demand for international education all over the world is rising, and particularly so in India. We heard in another panel that everybody wants to now go abroad to study. Technology plays a very different role here, in the sense that it is also enabling people who do not have the finances, who do not have the capability to study, to get skills, sitting at home, not spending too much money. So technology, in a sense, is an enabler. Universities worldwide are trying to attract the best of talents. They are looking at cross-border partnerships. The universities want to establish joint campuses. They're thinking in terms of joint research. But the other trend that we've seen now is that of immigration walls which are coming up, visas becoming more difficult. Students get accepted in foreign universities, but at the end of the day don't get their visa and are disappointed. So where is all this heading? And we'll try to make some sense of that. The other very interesting thing which I thought of when I was looking at this subject is the fact that a lot of countries actually depend on India for higher education. And India has been a land which has provided for centuries. If you think of Nalanda, Vikramshila universities, these were residential universities where thousands of students used to come study from Central Asia, from China, and that trend has continued. Imagine in 1950, when the country was dealing with so many issues like refugee problem, there was riots, and in the middle of all this, the education minister decided to set up the ICCR, Indian Council for Cultural Relations. And the first few scholarships to study in India was given by ICCR as far back as 1950. So, the government of India realized that there is some value in our education, which maybe countries like us, then it was the NAM group, in the spirit of South-South cooperation, as we call it now, that few students started coming to India. That scholarship program has now grown to more than 4,000 scholarships that Government of India gives to foreign nationals in India, bulk of which goes to African countries, Afghanistan, and to our neighborhood, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan. People come to India for not only technical education, STEM subjects, but also for very interesting things like theater, art, music. So that scholarship tradition remains. For the ASEAN countries, India offers slots in IITs. I'm not very sure how many I've got used, but when I was in service, I realized that at least 20, 30 students enrolled themselves even during the COVID, because IIT slots were given to ASEAN countries. So this session should, I would like us to, our distinguished panel, to look at issues like how can India seize this moment of transformation to redefine its role in global education by expanding partnerships, enhancing student mobility, and positioning itself as a competitive and trusted global education hub. I would also like to mention that, when we are talking about this whole discussion about mobility, higher education, etc., is actually we're talking about a very small percentage of people in India. There is a vast majority out there who have no access to even basic education. So is this whole discussion that we are having about more opportunities, is this leaving out a certain section of the society, the underprivileged, the not so privileged? And I always put women in that category because women really don't get equal opportunities. So with that, I will go over to my panelists. May I start with you, Ambassador Ackerman, to give your initial remarks.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It is a pleasure to be here, and it's a highly important panel, and the topic is very relevant for us in particular, and I'll tell you why in a second. I have 2 points to make. One is on Germany and one is on India, if you allow. So we in Germany have experienced a sort of an Indian miracle when it comes to universities. We have 60,000 Indian students at German universities right now. That's the biggest non-German group, and it's a group that has, is 10 times as big as 10 years ago, so or more than 10 times as big. So we have, this year alone, we have 35% more applications at German universities by Indian students. That certainly has to do with the US policy on receiving or not so much receiving Indian students in the last couple of months, or Canada also in a more difficult spot, so people turn and shift towards Germany. And we have the experience that our universities have made, their experience with Indian students is exceptionally good. So Indian students are seen as hardworking, dedicated, committed, and extremely ambitious. And that's why Indian applications get normally, or in most cases, a very favorable assessment. We don't have a visa problem. There is some visa hiccups here and there, delays for a week or two, but generally speaking, our visa policy is good. And what is more, at public universities in Germany, I'm not talking about the private ones, public universities are for free, because education is a public good in Germany, and you don't pay fees for studying. So it's also quite a deal. And why is Germany offering that very, very good deal to Indian students? Because once you graduate in Germany, you have 18 months to find a job, and then you get a permission to stay. That's a very generous law, and to our knowledge, somewhere between 50 to 70% of the Indian students who graduate in Germany stay in Germany for a while. That's the deal we want. That's the deal we offer to the Indian students, and we are so far extremely satisfied with the result of the deal. Now, it sounds wonderful and rosy. Of course, with 60,000, you also have problems, and that's sort of the more problematic part of it. There is a lot of, in this wave of Indian students going to Germany, there is a lot of people jumping the wagon somehow, and we see private institutions, often non-German institutions, who call themselves universities, setting up shop in Germany, granting German degrees, but degrees from other countries, other European countries, and they work together with agents that recruit especially for these institutions. Now, there the bar is very low, also the marks are very low, and people end up in a very difficult situation, indebted, in a very precarious environment. And we have a group of people in Germany who, I think, fall for this, I must say, mostly fraudulent agencies. And I would say when you look at education in India right now, what you should look at is also the agencies. The agencies are uncontrolled, frankly. That's our experience. Everybody sets up an agency. Some agencies have only one of these institutions in their portfolio, and many people above all in the northwest of India fall for this agency. So one point I would make is we want good Indian students. We can't rely on agencies who are fraudulent institutions here. It's very difficult to control them, but that should be one aspect. The other point I'd like to make is India proper. India has proven to be a top-notch research dedication here. I think you have a situation of universities here who are really world-class. IITs, you mentioned yourself, but also private universities now in India are really, really good. They are, unfortunately, completely unknown in Europe. So when I asked how many German students are studying in India, I would say maybe not even 100. And that's wrong. It's really wrong. I can only say it is worth going to IIT Madras for a year if you are an engineer. It enriches your knowledge and your experience. And I just met a young fellow from Passau, a small German university town, who studies at Delhi Law School for a year. He is thrilled to bits. He said it's a wonderful time. And I think what we should do, and that also goes a bit to the Indian government, frankly, is making India as a place to study and to come to work as a researcher, to study at some good research university, more popular, more known. I think once people know about India as a research location worldwide, more people might come. So that's basically my wish, is that India makes its own infrastructure as research and university country of research and universities more known worldwide, so that also more German students, I would say, come to India, spend time here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think that's a very interesting a point that you mentioned, that there should be exchange both ways, and maybe we should not underplay what the clear advantages, some of the advantages we have. So with these words, Rukmini Banerjee.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I don't think I've ever been on a stage with 2 ambassadors and 1 dean. We work in primary education and therefore perhaps have not had this opportunity. But in this two-way exchange reminded me, last year I had the opportunity to go to Zambia. And I was in a very, the eastern province, which is not a major destination perhaps for tourists and so on. And when we got off at the airport, it's a small airport, the hotel, so to speak, a lady came to pick us up. And when we got into it was actually a pickup truck, not even a car, she greeted us by saying namaste and spoke a few Hindi words. And she was Zambian. So of course we asked why. And her son had studied in Punjab for his entire undergraduate and then graduate. And apparently a lot of young people from the eastern province of Zambia had been studying in India. And she was very proud of the fact that she was known in the area for cooking Indian food. Her hotel had Indian food. But the more interesting reason, I think, the more interesting part of the story is why I was there in the first place. So we were invited by the government of Zambia to actually visit their schools, their primary schools, because some of the methods that we are using in India, in our government schools, for how we work with primary school kids to help them to learn how to read and to do arithmetic quickly, is something that the Zambian government has actually taken on. And that method, which has gone from India, it's called teaching at the right level, is used in schools and primary schools all over Zambia. So this kind of an exchange, I think that coming to higher education, either coming to India or going from India, is well known. But I would like sometime during this conversation to say that other things that are happening in education, sometimes at the lower end of education, going out to other countries, a lot of sub-Saharan African countries, but recently also in Central America, who are looking to find effective models of how education can be strengthened. Looking at India on our own, I would say that everybody is now working on what will make the human capital of India really contribute to Viksit Bharat, or to the developed India that we want to see by 2047. And certainly in that, a key part, I think, is that if the basic foundation of primary education is not strong in India, we are not going to be able to fulfill the potential, whether in India or abroad. And a third point I just want to leave, which maybe we can come back to, in this very rapidly interconnected world, what is it that we should do in Indian schools particularly to get a mindset, a global mindset among our students, whether they study abroad or not later, comes later. But I think there has to be a greater recognition that we are a very interconnected world, and somehow that has to influence how all our children think.
Thank you. May I now hand over to Professor Pikas?
Thank you. I join my fellow panelists and everyone in thanking Abhiman and all of you for being here and congratulating you on the India's World. When I arrived here, I think I knew why I was supposed to come, in that I've been working on building universities in different parts of the world. I have spent 10 years building a joint venture in China when a lot of American universities were building universities in China. And I began to learn more about Indian higher education when I wrote this book on new global universities and featured Ashoka University as part of that. What I didn't realize is that, of course, this whole day is on mobility. And my work before focusing on higher education was on immigration. Particularly immigration and citizenship policy in the United States, in Germany, and in other countries. And I'm reminded of the Swiss novelist Max Frisch's comment that, speaking about guest worker policies, that something to the effect of we asked for workers and they sent us people. And the point obviously being, and others have made this earlier in the day, the point that migration is the human face of globalization. And it is as much, we've talked a lot about economics today, as of course we should, but migration is fundamentally also about identity. It's about meaning. And if we don't wrestle with that, if we just treat this as if it's the movement of goods and services and not of people and identities, we are going to miss the entire story. And if you'll allow me one personal note on that, this is also an odd kind of anniversary for me. 75 years ago, my father came overland from London, through where he'd been studying, through Iran, through Pakistan. He crossed the border at the Wagah border crossing. He went through Amritsar and Varanasi and Delhi. And what was he doing here? He was searching for Sri Aurobindo. And he had been drawn by this notion of somebody who was a deep thinker both about nationalism and about globalism, and the tensions and challenges that I don't have to tell any of you about, you know better than I do. But I just struck that it was, I hadn't thought about it, Hapiman, that it was literally 1950 when he came across the border there, and I just imagine him then, and here we are. But it's another story about mobility and about national identity and globalization. And you may be asking at this point, yes, and where are we with regard to higher education? And here, let me just preview a few points that we can see if we return to. But they've already come up. Ambassador, you've mentioned this, that India is obviously poised in some ways uniquely as a dual opportunity, as both a source of global mobility for students in higher education and as a hub for students to come to India. There are a lot of shifts in the global flow of students that in many ways play into opportunities for India in terms of both the drivers and in terms of what students are seeking. And we can come back to that. There are enormous opportunities, therefore, for India, I think, to seize a special role here. And at the same time, there are enormous challenges which, Nitin, you spoke earlier about the value of being a fast follower, that's okay, you don't have to invent everything. And I think that's true, and there are some real opportunities there. But I also think the opportunity would be missed not to play leapfrog to see where Indian higher education, particularly as a hub, can create new ways of doing higher education. And if it doesn't do that, it's going to lack credibility. It's going to lack credibility as having sufficient indigenous quality that students and research partners are going to want to come here. Not because there isn't quality, particularly at the research level, but in the teaching and the education, there are still many, many questions that outsiders have and that many of you have. And that if India is not tending to the garden that it's growing more carefully, I think it may miss this opportunity to be both a source and also uniquely a hub for the next generation of global higher education.
Thank you. Thank you. I think maybe I'll just start the conversation with you because you've raised a very interesting point about India being the hub of global higher education. What challenges do you see in that? I mean, clearly we have the, the IITs, we have the institutes of science, our universities are well reputed, and so what are the challenges that you see, and where do we need to take the corrective action?
So I am not an expert on Indian higher education, so I want to be appropriately cautious here. And yet, I didn't come this far not to have a few impressions, a few thoughts on this. And there's a long list that one could come up with, but let me focus on one primary and one related, I don't want to say subsidiary, but allied issue. And it's not really about research. It's much more about curriculum and pedagogy and engaging, whether it's at the K-12 level or at the university level. I think that that the challenges, and they're not faced by India alone by any means, but the quality of teaching in India, even at some of the best institutions, is limited. There are you can see the studies that show that 80% of what is delivered in the lecture format. There is a science of learning. We know that the single worst form of teaching in the world is the lecture. Nobody remembers anything. It's as simple as that. The obsessive focus on content, when we all have in our pockets all the content in the world, and yet people forget it overnight. And so the focus on these passive kinds of pedagogies, a lack of attention to hybrid and integrated uses of technology married with experiential education, the time that faculty have to actually engage with students. I don't know if you've seen the G3 consulting organization's report on faculty in India and what they spend their time on. It will not surprise you that they do not spend their time on the only thing we all say that cares, which is deep engagement with students. That is what quality is all about. It is not about sitting in a lecture hall. And I think the extent to which that things are highly regulated and a large administrative bureaucracy, which is true of universities the world over, but I don't have to tell you is especially true here, that is handicapping. It's holding back India's ability to actually have faculty do the core work that is necessary if they are going to be seen as leaders in, we've been talking about skills and we can come to that, but in what is actually needed in today's education. And I'll just end with the related point to this is that anyone who's worked in a university knows, right, the old joke about a university president, right, is that it's like a cemetery keeper, right? There are a lot of people under him, but nobody's listening. And that you have a workforce of faculty who, unless they have a degree of independence and autonomy, they cannot do the work. It is not something you can program them to do. And so having institutions and having individual faculty be able to have that freedom to work with students, again, is the single sine qua non of whether India will be known as a quality place or simply as a replica.
Thank you. I think very interesting points, and this room has a large population of students, I think, as well as teachers. So I'm sure they will have reactions to that, and that's very interesting. India has also addressed some of these issues to bring its education system, higher education system, to global levels with its new education policy, which is being slowly implemented. Ambassador, if I may ask you two questions. One is a very simple one, which is, if given the interest of Indian students in studying in Germany, are any German universities thinking in terms of opening campuses here? And if there is interest in doing, joint research and higher research in that sense. And another question that I wanted to ask you is that, Germany is also a big investor. You have a lot of companies here. We are familiar with some of the brand names. And, one of the complaints about the education system is always that it churns out, people seeking jobs who are not really skilled to do the job which the industry needs. So the skill and industry need matching. Very few countries are able to do, and certainly that's one big problem that we have, that we are not able to match the skills with the jobs. I've seen in China that, when they're thinking in terms of building 10 bridges, they will give a diktat to the university that you better come out with 1,000 civil engineers, out of which 500 should be tunneling experts. So that kind of thing does not happen in India, and but even to match, suppose you are building a hub of pharmaceutical companies. Are you matching, are you anticipating how many, chemical engineers you'll need, how many pharmaceutical, people specializing in pharmaceuticals you'll need? So does that factor go in? Where is the skill set thinking?
Thank you very much. First answer is, first question is, are there any German universities thinking about setting up campuses here? The answer is very few. And the reason for that being, education is a public good. It is funded by the government. So basically the government funds a university 100%. There is no need for a university to look out for funding from abroad. So when you see all these universities who set up campuses here now, like Australia, UK, maybe even American university, they are here to make money. I mean, that's a utter truth. It's cheaper than to go to maybe Duke University, to go to Duke Bangalore or Duke Gurgaon, and therefore they have a branch here that makes money, and that's not, the very essence of the German university is not about making money. Now, there are, of course, as I said, private universities, and I heard that indeed some private schools are thinking about setting up a campus near, let's say, big German companies here in order to prepare maybe students for a future career in the IT business or so in Bangalore. That's true, but I think the number compared to other countries here is very limited. But what is not limited, and that's again something very German, is the research cooperation. You have hundreds of university partnerships here. And we are talking about IIT Madras. We were talking about, let me tell you a short story. My grandfather, because you talked about your, was one of the persons who set up IIT Madras. It is the German IIT, as it were, and in the early 60s he went to Madras and he was one of the professors who set it up. So for me it has a very dear place in my heart. IIT Madras has partnerships with at least 5 German universities, research partnerships, and where the exchange on research basis is very regular and very intense. So as a research destination, India is in research circles very well known. Yeah? So we have engineering researchers who come here to Kanpur, to Bombay, to IIT Madras. So there is this very intense and very manifold university to university cooperation, but it is mainly focused on research and not on students. And what I tell German universities here is, when you set up little representations, which we have offices of 12, 15 German universities here in India, go and also try to recruit the right students for your courses. You have to reach out to students, not only to researchers, which you like to do, but also for the students. Now, your second question is also a very German question, is about skill and vocational training. We have done a lot in India about vocational training, with a mixed result, I would say. For many reasons, mixed results. What I see now is that all the German companies, the more than 2,000 German companies here, most of them do an in-house training, skill development inside the company for the company. So what we would like to see is more skill training by the government or by some schools in India, be they private or non-private schools, for the labor market in general. But, you know, let me say one thing. You know, not everybody will be a leader. Yeah? We're all thinking about future, but not everybody will be a leader. Our thinking is rather, you need a decent, good training to make a good, job or workforce in your life, and that includes also blue-collar jobs. You know, mechanics, mechatronics, and that's something where, you know, in this country, people still have reserves. You know, these professions are not as highly regarded as white-collar professions. So, in Germany, when you get a mechatronic training, you go to school, you get a master's degree, you get a very good living with this job. It's a well-earning job, you know. But that's not so much the case here, and people would like to be IT engineers and working in AI rather than sitting at an assembly belt and really knowing about the machinery or something. So I think we have a mentality problem also to overcome. But what I see is that the in-house training in companies here for Indian young gifted people, also on the machines, works very well. But it is not done on a general level, it's done on a case-to-case level, because they need these people and they want to train them for themselves, so to speak.
Thank you, Rukmini. Our ambition to be an education hub is focused very heavily on universities. But those who go to universities also need a strong basic foundational education. They need school level education, and I know that that's an area where a lot of auditing has been done, a lot of work, and every time what we see as a result of these reports does not make us happy, because we know that the quality of education is very diverse. You have everybody in rural India wants their children to have English language education. If you travel out of any big city, in the villages, you will find in the middle of a rice field, there is a bloom school or flower school or whatever, English education school. And parents spend an enormous amount of money to send their kids to these English education, so-called English education schools. So what do we need to do to fix that? I know it's a very broad, very big question. We can have a whole day seminar on that. But, just your thoughts on how can we have complement these two strands so that, India really can take the steps to become a global educational hub, and there is a healthy exchange of higher education as well. So where do we work on the school level education?
So as I said, higher education I have no idea about. The organization I work for is called Pratham, and the word means primary. But I would say a couple of things. One is that we have succeeded over the last few decades in actually getting almost every child into primary school. So we have today the advantage, I would say, that you have 250 million in an elementary school age group, and 98% is attached to some kind of school or the other. Once that, I think the enrollment and the provisioning, which was a big issue for the Millennium Development Goals, have been met, that attention naturally has moved to how do you get better quality starting early. Many moves have been made, many efforts, but I think things are coming together, particularly after the new education policy, which has a very, very big paradigm shift in the early grades. So number one is that we've brought the age group 3 to 6 as part of this foundational stage. So all the way from age 3 to age 8 is also now part of the entire education system. So many changes have happened, many will happen. I think that this very high national priority to ensuring foundational literacy and numeracy, and starting well, and starting early and starting well, I think will begin to pay dividends as we go along. So, I mean, I'm painting a very, very broad brush, that at least at the primary level, we know what to do, we have to get it done. We know there are enough examples from states, from different parts of India about how do you ensure fundamental and foundational literacy, numeracy by the time you're age 8 or age 9. In the world at large, if I look at the Sustainable Development Goals, one of the goals is by 2030 to achieve this. And we can see that there is a real effort around the world about how do you do this, get this job done. And interestingly, even though we as Indians may feel we need much higher levels, there are countries that are coming to India to see how we are doing this foundational level. Uttar Pradesh, which is one of our biggest states, has shown significant progress from where we were, Uttar Pradesh was 10 years ago till today. There's still a long way to go, but there is, I think actually moving forward, I'm not going to go all the way to higher education, but I think our middle school, which is grade 6 to 8, is actually a place where a lot more attention needs to come. If we say that we have an idea of what to do in the primary grades, I think middle school is the place where really new rethinking is needed. And here I want to bring an example. This is for us, it's quite a unique example, there may be others. Siemens, for example, which is a German company, has done, I think as part of their company's foundational work, a lot of work on STEM education. And STEM education both in Germany as well as in Brazil. And they approached us to say that how can some of the things that they have seen working in Germany and in Brazil could be adapted for Indian middle school education, so as to bring in what I think you were talking about, how do you bring in hands-on engagement, how do you move your pedagogical methods away from, even in school we have a lot of chalk and talk, into sort of hands-on things. So I think there is, while at the higher education there's much to be done, I think in terms of middle school, which is where you can then begin to move towards what is the new future of education going to be, is a place where a lot of more collaboration can happen, more learning from each other's experiences. And what impressed me about Siemens is they were looking at Germany, Brazil, and then India. So it's not just they're looking at some low-income countries or middle-income countries, but they're looking at what succeeds in their own country and trying to figure out how that works. So we've spent 3 years actually looking at the material they had, adding to it, and I think this kind of sharing is really important. Now, why is it an incentive for Siemens to do this? I don't know. I'm not questioning because we are benefiting. But I think that there are many places in the world to learn. I've never been to China. I don't know much about China, but we can see that they have done a lot of things in their school education, which maybe, we always hear about Singapore, but Singapore is tiny. So, where is it that India can learn from is something that I think would be a lot of exchange at a higher education level, but not much below. And I think we need to start below to say, here is what India can offer, and who can offer what, and what can we do.
Thank you. I have a question for both of you, Dr. Pincus and Ambassador. In the previous sessions, I mean, the whole this event is about mobility. And one of the previous session, one of the speakers said that, Indian students want to go abroad, study, and most of them stay on and they want to work. Now, see, for anybody, if you're pursuing higher education, except for a very, very small fraction who are very privileged and who pursue education for the sake of education, everybody is looking for higher education for a job. Everybody is looking for a job, they want to work somewhere. So how do you see, the present global trend is that by and large, visas are becoming more and more difficult, immigration is becoming more and more difficult. So what, do you see a trend where, in maybe in a few years to come, it will become so difficult that, this whole exchange of students, and this I'm talking about in a very global sense, not only of Indian students, students from other parts of the world who go abroad to study, will that stop at some point of time? How are universities looking at that? And how will it impact, the whole concept of attracting talent, of doing, research with talent from abroad? After all, the American universities and the private universities especially it's widely said that they're like magnets. The best talent from all over the world gets attracted to these universities, and that's why innovation and research is so far beyond other countries in the United States, because the universities provide that ecosystem. So how is this trend? I know it's very difficult to predict, especially in Trump's world, that how this is going to pan out. But some thoughts on that.
So I would say, you say the best talents go to the US, and the smartest. I would add the best and smartest who can afford to go to the US,
exactly.
Because in your school is $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year, even more. I mean, good luck with that. I don't know many Germans who can afford. So I say that I know that there are scholarships also, and sometimes they're very generous. So I don't want, and I have the greatest respect for American universities. But I would say, it's a small, very, very tiny bit of all the smart students who can afford to go to the US and to other countries, including mine, although it's much cheaper in mine. I would say this is not going to stop, and I will tell you why, at least for Europe. Europe has, since 50 years, a birth rate of 1.5. Yeah? So we are aging rapidly. Everybody knows that skilled labor is needed urgently. The best skilled labor is the skilled labor you train yourself, meaning that people who come and study in Germany, graduate in Germany, know the German system, know hopefully the German language, that's a bit of a problem because most of the courses are taught in English, and people sometimes feel that they can manage their life in English, which is also true, but it's better to learn German anyhow. And I think that then the offer is to stay in Germany is basically because we need skilled labor. Now, I think you are right when you say, migration is a contested issue. People are in Europe at least, people are very, nervous and anxious, and there is a polarization going on about migration. But that doesn't hide the fact that this skilled labor is needed, and that therefore universities in Europe will open up. You will see that in a couple of years, many European countries will be competing about Indian talent. And one of the big, pluses or assets India has is this human capital, this dedicated, ambitious, hardworking human capital. The Indian diaspora in Germany is about 3 lakh, and it's not a big diaspora, it's a smaller diaspora in comparison to other diasporas in Germany, but these 3 lakh people, their average income is way higher than the average income of an average German. Now already you see that this is such a group of performing citizens. You can get citizenship in 5 years in Germany, and the rules are relatively generous. So for us, we have a high interest, in spite of all the migration discussion going on, to get this talent. And therefore, I think that our universities will continue to compete and to continue to accept Indian applications. And we don't think, I don't think that we'll have a sort of a stop at some moment in the coming years.
So I think our two ambassadors have framed the larger question we all face in this world, but which, if I simplified it, might be to what degree does identity win out? And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, I just mean in a descriptive sense, but the sovereignty and the sensibility of national identity and belonging, to what degree does that win out in reducing in significant ways migration, and to what degree ultimately does labor and skills and economics overcome that in a way? And I don't know what the answer, and I'm not sure any of us do, exactly how that's going to play out. But I do think it is going to play out in ways different than we are used to. And in some ways, in ways that are going to be very good for those countries and those universities that understand that. Let me say a little bit about what I mean. What is the standard model by which we mostly do international or global higher education? We sign MOUs. We sign memos of understanding. These are mostly symbolic. We have entire offices at our universities dedicated. Their metrics, their KPIs at the end of the year are how many MOUs they signed. It has no meaning for whether that partnership did anything, whether there were faculty or students deeply engaged on both sides, whether it has simply become an end in itself. I can assure you in China, this is a high art form, that it's just astonishing. And I don't mean that MOUs are bad, I just mean that most of them are symbolic and not so helpful. And even the joint ventures, in many ways, these are hard to do genuinely. You're right, some of them are financial reasons. Many of them are not, I think. They are deeper engagements, but they're just hard to do. Different cultures across the world trying to work out a mutual education approach. They very often just become mere replicas and a shadow of where they came from. So a world in which there is potentially less mobility also is a world in which I think what I'm seeing and what I wrote about in this book, if you think about it, one of the ministers said earlier, right, we keep thinking about mobility as it's mobility of people, but it's also mobility of work. And mobility of work is fundamentally enhanced right now by technology, right? We are all working in different ways all over the world at once. And that is opening up new possibilities for both cheaper education to reach more people, and done well, potentially even better education. Because if you try to put online the kind of things that most of we see in our classroom of somebody reading from their notes, well, it's just the death of everything. So what are we seeing in these trends of higher education globally? Much more networked approaches, much more modular, much more hybrid. Minerva University, where I worked, which is cheap from an American perspective, but still more expensive globally. But it has a global student body, and they rotate around the world because they learn online. African Leadership University in Mauritius and Rwanda, and now in New York City and Silicon Valley, what do? They have a deep focus on experiential and problem-based learning because they don't have enough faculty and they can't afford to pay them in Africa to do this kind of education. So the students have to do a lot of teaching themselves, but they've turned that into something like, where do you need a professor? Do you need them every day in class? No. So this is opening up new possibilities for better forms of education. And it's actually led, Abhiman and I when he invited me, I said this is remarkable because Next month, we're launching what we call a global network for innovation and access to do what you were speaking about, Rukmini, which is to say, let's not just sign these big, giant MOUs or joint ventures. We need innovation sandboxes where emerging institutions and established institutions can learn from each other in smaller ways in an ecosystem where you can replicate and you can test. Otherwise, what we have is essentially silos within nation states, many of which, therefore, are not subject to the most urgent needs of improving pedagogy.
Thank you, thank you. I think we're having a very interesting discussion. We'll move on to question-answer session now. Before that, I just wanted to make two comments. One was that, of course, I think European Union gives a lot of scholarships. The most well-known is, of course, the Erasmus, but otherwise also there are lots of scholarships which are available to students. On the issue that you raised, Ambassador, about the agents being unscrupulous, frankly, this used to happen with labor going to the Gulf. There was a time when, people were cheated right, left, and center by the unscrupulous, what we call manpower agents. But Government of India had put together a very rigorous system of checking these people and having controls over them. And over a period of time, I think at the end of the day, you have to build awareness that, what is the genuine path to take education abroad and who are the unscrupulous elements. And this is a very good point, I think, which you have flagged. I think we should be aware of that. I remember that there was a point when, there was this massive scam of medical education in the former Soviet Union, and those hundreds of students were scammed out of that system. And I remember that Government of India had taken very strict action, and there was constant warning to students that don't spend money and go to these countries, because it was nothing to do with these countries. It was basically agents from India who were taking vulnerable students there and misleading them with false promises. So with these words, may I open the Happy Moon has a question. Yeah, sure.
Thank you for this is fantastic panel. I enjoyed so much. I have one quick question, and that is, earlier we mentioned that workers don't always need to move. Work can move. In the same manner, I understand students who want to go abroad and study in a foreign university. I also understand that education, I've been an educator myself, education is more than what you learn in a classroom. It's also about the environment, the socialization. All of that is true. But if you are unable to move into a new country to get education, education can move for you. And I think, Noah, the kind of work that you do is really, that really speaks to this kind of a concern. That why should education remain only in the university, only in one country? It can move around the world. You can have global education sitting in your own country, in your own location. I guess, Rukminiji, that is also in some ways applicable to primary education, right? So I think for a country like India, given the scale that we have, given the number of young students who have to get educated, the answer lies in technology, and how do you creatively use technology in order to make sure that education travels around, it is accessible to people. I was wondering what the panelists have to say about that. Thank you.
Shall we take two more questions and then we'll throw it to the panel? Yes, please. And then please introduce yourself also.
I'm Krishna Kumar. I teach at Venkateshwara College in the Department of Economics. I'm very happy to hear from you, Dr. Ackerman, about the reasons why Germany is not interested in starting educational institutions abroad in different places. Very clear and cogent. I only wanted to ask you, and as an add-on to what you had said, that Germany is not averse towards research cooperation. But again, you said that the research cooperation bubbles which you have in India were mostly with IITs. I would go a step further and say, why can't Germany think in terms of having research collaborations with the second tier of the higher educational institutions, that is like the colleges across the country, which could possibly be a better way of fostering partnership or better way of making them partners in this whole process. To Dr. Rukmini Banerjee also have a question. See, the efforts of this primary education activist in our country and the NGOs has helped 98% of our children to be in schools. And we are now witness to a massive process of what we characterize as the massification of higher education. So might be the same people who facilitated the primary education activities, because you were triggering a thing when there was a vacuum. I think it is now your responsibility to address this issue of higher education. You have also to move forward, because the point is, you know what was the state of Bihar and UP at that time. And now I think you have to think about what is the problem of a middle class college in Uttar Pradesh. Only you can address it, I feel. And I would, just as a question, I would ask you this, that should a billion population country like India be looking for models in mass higher education from small countries abroad, or should we be rather looking to the only 1 billion plus country in the world, the other 1 billion plus country in the world, China? And I fully agree with your idea of a fetishism of MOUs, though I don't have any question about it.
Thank you.
Almost what Ambassador Ackerman said about sort of demographic trends in Germany driving the kind of need for skilled labor. I would say our own demographic trends are also driving us in a certain direction. We have very broadly, if I calculate, every single year age group is about 25 million. So 25 million kids in 6th grade, 7th grade, and so on. Now, if I look at the data, even 10, 12 years ago, out of a 25 million, if I looked at 8th grade enrollment in India, the enrollment was about something like 12 to 13 million. Today, it is 23 million. So this pressure that is going higher is definitely there. So one challenge, of course, is to make sure that as you go up the grade chain, so to speak, you are going stronger in each year, because with so many large numbers of children having come into school in the last 20 years, there are questions about what are they learning and how quickly. But I also think that the nature of the lag that follows, so there are kids who are moving through the school system, their parents may not have had that kind of opportunity, and the parents want a certain kind of trajectory that perhaps doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So, everybody wants a government job. I'm coming from, I'll just give you a concrete example. I spent last week 5 days in a district called, it's called Chhatrapati Sambhaji Nagar, otherwise known as Aurangabad. Ajanta Ellora is in that district. That district is seeing, it's already an auto hub, and it is seeing massive increase in manufacturing, particularly in the auto sector that is coming. The biggest Toyota factory in Asia is going to be there very soon. So at the industry level in the district, there is this forward-looking manufacturing that is really expanding in a very big way. But if you go to the villages where we work and talk to parents, it's sort of like that's a different world. I want my child to be a police officer. Now, we do need police officers, but I think that this mismatch is not only about the students who are in school, but it's also about the mindset of the teachers and of the parents. And one of the interesting things we did there, this is not UP and I'm not solving anyone's problem, I'm just talking, was to actually have industry talk to primary school kids. Because these are just two separate worlds. So how, let's say, what we are planning for India as to human capital formation for Viksit Bharat, we said, think about one district. And what is that district? Has about 1,600 primary schools. It has a massive manufacturing sector. Where do you start talking and what do you do? And again, I'll come back to my favorite topic, which is, I think all of this needs to begin in middle school. Because you have 6 years to change the way we teach, the what we teach, to bring in the industry connections, to change the mindset of parents, because there is going to be work. How many jobs there are going to be, I don't know. But already you can see that because there is going to be a big Japanese influx, there are people in the housing sector who are already researching what Japanese houses are like, so as to be able to. So I think this is a very dynamic world, and it's not just, sir, my responsibility, I think it's all our responsibility to figure out that for these 25 million who are going to hit the high school level and beyond, we need them and us and the parents to be much better prepared for new opportunities. Some of it is going to spill over and go to other countries, but most are going to remain here. And therefore, how do we create right next to Aurangabad is a district called Hingoli, where there is no industrial development. How should they think about what is going on in their entire, going from primary to middle to higher to work? Maybe different, maybe similar. But I think we need to think, we have a very, I would say, one-size-fits-all higher education system. I think we need to get to thinking about what opportunity lies, how can we get ready, and how can we actually, through all of this variation, still create equal opportunity for kids to go ahead.
Thank you. I think you brought in a very, very interesting and actually an eye-opener kind of a perspective to this whole discussion. It's absolutely, extremely important to have the, in 5 years' time when a kid is coming out of a school, what kind of institution is available in walking distance or cyclable distance where he doesn't have to spend enormous amount of money to go and educate himself or herself for a job in an industry which is coming up and which clearly needs that skill set. I think this is very, very important issue you've raised.
I completely agree, and Rukmini, if I can pick up on two things you said. One was about new opportunities, and the other is about mismatches. And I'll try and direct that back to Hapiman's question about technology, because I think there are two mismatches that stand in the way of our actually, and by our, I mean all of us in the world, and then we can focus here within India, that stand in the way of new opportunities. One is, yes, technology. I mean, we have gone an entire day, I think, and no one has said the two letters together, right? A and I. That's pretty remarkable. But when we talk about technology, we're obviously not just talking here about being online. We are talking fundamentally about artificial intelligence and data science and everything that is happening, which is fundamentally upending in bad ways and potentially in really good ways all of the things we do in education. And I think that the two mismatches we get involved in is when we think that we keep talking about skills, and I think the first is that tends to focus only globally. And I think most of what matters in the next millennium is the degree to which students have both global fluency and local relevancy. And there's a risk in which we don't develop a rooted kind of globalism, but we either have too focused on the local and not understanding or able to connect or engage globally, or the opposite, right? The sort of notion of global citizenship, as if that exists. And so I think India has a unique opportunity here with its deep and long traditions and history and habits of thought to develop something that is much more rooted and global at the same time. But, and this goes to the second mismatch, I've been puzzled by the conversation all day about skills here. Because at one level, we all get it. I think we get what we mean by a skill and an industry and what its need is. But the whole point of the economy in the world we live in today is how fast all that changes. And that the training for skill, right? It was only 2 years ago that every student in the world thought they needed to major in computer science and data science. And now it turns out those first-rung jobs are all going away because of AI. So what is important in skills is durable underlying skills. Can you identify a problem, get the right problem? Can you break it down? Can you do a gap analysis of what's missing? Do you understand how to communicate that and to design solutions? Now, yes, there are differences between a mechanic all the way up to an ambassador in terms of what they need there, but there's some fundamental habits and skills, and I worry that we reduce skills to the narrowest thing. What do I need to do the ISO 900 or 9000 accreditation here, when tomorrow it's going to be something else? And what we need here, and this is especially relevant for Indian higher education, is that combination that nobody has figured out, which is the combination of the fundamental skills we used to call the liberal arts and the frontier skills that we are all seeing are necessary and essential to actually have capabilities and not only have what you might call creative and critical thinking. That is the thing that the education system or the country that best solves that will rule the world.
Excellent point. I think this is the point we miss till now, the role of liberal arts and, critical thinking. It looks like, even at the end of the day, the panel at least is very alive, and it seems that the audience is also
can I answer
very
my,
alive.
my
Yes,
question
of course.
before you close?
No, I'm not closing.
I'm sorry.
You have to answer Happy Moon's question also.
No, Hamdun's question is beautifully answered by Noah Pickes here, so I think technology is important. I say that's the answer to your question. But I want to say that I would wish German universities set up campus here in India. And why would I wish that? I encourage them to come here and set up campus because, studying, being at university is much more than learning the substance. It's about becoming a grown-up. And the best thing that happened to me in my university town was my year abroad. So I think, let me give you a wonderful example. An Indian student who comes to Germany, not only that, it's raining all the time, people are rude and they don't know the language, but of course they never in their life, middle-class Indians never in their life have made up their own bed, let alone baked an egg, this is something, do shopping, this is something they have to learn, for the first time they have to experience, to look after themselves. Absolutely. And that's something that many of them really enjoy after a while, And I think a German student coming to India who lives in a hostel with other students has completely different experience. This guy from Passau who studies at Delhi Law School, he's enthusiastic about the way they welcomed him and what he does with his fellow students. So it's an experience that nobody should miss somehow. So therefore, I would say everybody who has the chance to go studying abroad should do it, and therefore a German campus here, who might also send people from home to here for a year, would be a fantastic improvement of the level of quality of education. You asked about the college partnerships. Now, my experience is that the universities in Germany go after partnerships they are really interested in. So if colleges do offer something a German university is interested in, or a German university of applied science is interested in, they wouldn't have a problem to partner up with you. I mentioned the IITs because of my personal history, but there are many, many other partnerships with other universities. I think it is what you have to offer that decides the partnership. And if you feel that your college has something to offer, my scientific counselor is sitting here in the front row, and he will match you up. So I think university partnerships are completely free-floating, I would say, across India, and there is no limit to any schools. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a question here. I think we'll have just one more round of questions. No, not at all.
Am I audible?
Yes.
So my name is Sagar Roy. I work with a member of parliament in Raj Sabha right now, and before that I used to work in UP with the Directorate of Urban Local Body. So I wanted to pick up where you left off on UP. So,
Careful, sir. Not careful.
So you mentioned during the conversation that UP has performed better in the last decade over several indicators, which is true mostly on learning outcome. And then in the reply to your answer, you mentioned about the last mile delivery of education like a village should have. But if you look at UP, there are a lot of schools that are closing down. And when I was there working, most of the focus, like you were discussing about tech, it was on building smart classes near villages. So I wanted to get your opinion on two things. One is about these smart classes. They don't have adequate amount of teachers to run these classes, and the teachers that are available, they are have to go into things like SIR right now and other election duties. So what do you think about that? And the second point is the last mile delivery of education. During the recent Bihar election, Prashant Kishore had this Nordic model of education that you were saying we won't establish schools everywhere, but we will make sure that there are buses to every villages that can go to the nearest good infrastructure built education center. So what do you think about that? And my second question is to Noah.
That's
sir.
already two questions. That's already two questions. Please allow somebody else to ask. There's one question at the back, and then I think we can wind up this. Right there.
Good evening, panel. This is Himanshu, a research scholar from University of Delhi. My question is to Dr. Banerjee. Given the context of like the current geopolitical scenario and the disruption of technologies, especially brought about by AI and the engulfing as a consequence of many white-collar jobs. So since Indians are embedded in an ethics of care, reciprocity, and complementarity, why don't we use these in the pedagogy and curriculum to build a workforce which is beneficial in the given domain of demographic dividend, also given global north is aging fast in the global care economy? What is your opinion on this these ethics of care can be used in the global care economy, since we are embedded in that relational ontologies, if I would put it very simply? Thank you.
Both the questions are to you.
So I don't know how much Indian TV the both of you watch, but I've learned some things from watching TV, that no matter what you're asked, you say whatever you feel like.
At the same time.
No, but I will try to answer, and I think it links also to the question on technology. So I'll just give you a story. And this is a story actually from Sitapur and Unnao in UP. So we all know that there are schools, some are good, some are not so good, and so on. But what actually also is a problem is that even whether you have a teacher, a good teacher or otherwise, you are often, when in the school system, required to complete the syllabus. And the syllabus moves in a very linear, progressive way. So, and it uses certain parts of your academic kind of capabilities. This is a small project that we did. It's not small. It was in 500 villages in UP, so it's that's probably bigger than Germany. But sorry.
That's true. It's true. It's the truth.
And what was done was, and this is a couple of years pre-COVID, there were tablets that we had received from a particular donor, and the tablets were distributed in these 400 villages. Kids who were 6th to 8th standard could actually use them. These were not for individual use. So you had to have groups of children who actually shared the tablet. So 2 groups of say 5 or 6 kids would share the tablet. Now in our own wisdom, we had loaded the tablets with content because we are also good Indians. We feel like children must have knowledge. But we learned a ton of things from the children from this experiment that was happening actually in the village. Number one was that there was a great concern that if you give valuable things in children's hands, they'll get destroyed. Nothing. We had far better, what shall I say, I don't know what the word is, that there was hardly any breakage, nobody stole anything. In fact, I visited these villages a lot at that time. Very often at home, you had pictures of gods and you put the tablet and subah utke sabko tika lagta tha, including the tablet. So there was no question of it not being treated well. Secondly, we found that even without lots of training and lots of instructions, children actually took very good care of it and they worked in groups. The third thing we learned is we put content in the tablet, and these are, mind you, these are UP kids of the type that you know and I know. Very soon we found when you went to visit them and said which content you like, they showed you content that we hadn't given them. And they had not downloaded, they had created. So we realized that children, the tablets, we had a perception that we are giving you knowledge. What we got in return is so much different variable things that the children did, because the first thing they noticed was there was a camera. So they would actually a lot of the videos that they had created had boys in the video. So immediately my colleagues started saying, gender differences. But when you ask the kids, the girl said that the boys, they don't know how to do anything else. They just know how to act. So we are behind the camera. What we did after this is to say, number one, children could work in groups. They liked working in groups. Number two, they like to choose projects. In our school system, we don't give them any choice. Number three is if you give a prompt or a nudge, just a simple, so for example, in the summer we said, make a film about either mango or water. We had tons and tons of, and we gave them a little bit of instruction on how to edit. Today, nobody needs in India any instruction on how to make movies. We all know how to make reels. Probably right now somebody is doing it in this room also. And we had to establish juries at the village level because there were so many little videos that were created by the kids. So what I'm trying to say is that number one, technology should be to do things that you normally can't do. In this case, it was, we were able to see what the kids can do and learn from them as opposed to what I am supposed to give the kids. The second thing was that kids could move in very non-linear ways. They just didn't have the opportunity before. So all of this, even to the gentleman at the back, I would say that we really need to, I think, experiment in a very systematic and pretty large-scale way about what you can learn from what kids like to do, how can you nudge them in directions. We had English videos because everybody wants to learn good English. They created better English videos than we did by actually looking around and so on and so forth. So how can we create this platform of learning which is not controlled by the curriculum, by the classroom, and the teacher? There were some teachers involved in this as well who saw that this was, a lot of families learned a lot of things. I went to somebody's house and the grandmother said, "Hame bhi pucho." We are also learning from these tablets because now that learning has come home. It is not captured only in the classroom. So I don't have a solution for UP, but it's a very good place to learn. And I don't want to comment on Prashant Kishore. I think all of this can happen in Bihar as well. I'm from Bihar myself, so.
Thank you, thank you. I think we've run out of time. And it's really nice, so nice to see the hall is full. You all are still interested in this discussion. And I must thank my wonderful panel. You have added so much value to the whole day's discussion. And, I was wondering that at the end of the day, how to keep people's attention, but clearly we've discussed something extremely important, which is really as I said in the beginning, which is at the heart of mobility, which is really a very, very fundamental question that we've discussed. And I have learned a lot from all of you, and I'm sure you all have learned. And, the one, I'm not going to even try to summarize what we've discussed because we've learned so many issues, the German experiment, the enthusiasm of the German government in welcoming Indian students, the plans, the joint research and the various other issues that we've discussed. But the one thing which everybody agreed to was that, countries will continue to compete amongst each other to try and grab the Indian talent pool. And I think that's a very happy note at which we can end today's discussion. Thank you all very much for your attention. And please, a big round of applause for this wonderful panel.